everyone, welcome back to SOP Podcast. Today I'm so elated, just like the way LinkedIn people say. I'm so elated to be having my very good friend called Nida. I call her Nida. And Nida, it's been a minute since I saw you.
Oh man, it's been years actually. So Steve and I actually do go way back in a way. We used to do some amazing work together. He would help us put together some very beautiful videography, photography for our events, and he's still doing a good job even now. He's still out there doing amazing stuff. And amepanda bei, which is great. We love to see our people succeed.
You better like me. You better see me looking nicely.
Yeah.
And even it's also okay that I can also buy you coffee. It's fine. It's fine.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
But even before we proceed, I think I want to ask you to introduce yourself, because the last time I met you, you are into actually digital comms, I remember.
Yes.
And the years have eloped, and you're here with me. So what are you doing now, and what are you working on as you speak?
Very much still in the same space. Yeah. So while people in my personal circle and my personal networks called me Nida, on LinkedIn, I am known as Leonida Kombo. Also, that's what the government calls me. So yes, okay. Leonida Kombo. Okay. So I'm still a communication and marketing specialist. Right now, I've had over 8 years of experience in this field. And how I can describe myself, the easiest way I can describe myself is that I help businesses get both offline as well as online presence. Yeah. And I've been doing this through multiple strategies. So whether it's digital marketing, or perhaps even more traditional things, for example, PR. Yeah. Those are just some of the things that I do for companies to basically help them get recognized by people, and loved and adored by their customers. So far I've been working mostly in the tech space. Okay. So I've worked for a tech company that dealt with customer experience for several years. That's the one you knew me from. So I was there for about probably almost 6 years. And then now I also went into the tech space in healthcare. For a company where I helped them onboard about 10,000 members through the work that I did. Okay. And then also the other customer experience company I told you about, I worked not only within Kenya, but we also had some work with partners like large telcos in West Africa, where we were able to reach at least 21,000, 21,000 businesses, SME owners, so that we were training them basically on how to use customer experience to elevate their business. Okay. And that's what I've been up to, and I'm still doing it.
It's amazing to hear that, because I think I've become a customer experience enthusiast because of our good friend Bella.
Yes.
Who's also likely to join us in another podcast. Stay tuned. But I became a customer experience enthusiast. I've just learned that over time, with the time, customer experiences, that in the end of every game, in the end of every conversation, be it personal, business, private, corporate, in the end, it's how I left feeling there. That thing has shaped how I think of things. And I'm so glad I met you in that company.
Thank you.
Handling that. But here today, we are in a very interesting times and era. But before we go to the topic, I like asking these questions.
Yeah.
Tell me of your favorite country you've traveled to that you'll highly recommend, and tell, hey, Steve, if you get some $200, please visit this country. This is the tour guide. Ask this person to show you these places, and tell this person it's Leonida who has sent you. Which is this country?
Oh gosh, that's a very complicated question. Hey, where do I even start? Which country I've visited? It has to be a place I've visited. I'm a place nimeona online.
Visited. Let's say you visited.
Yeah. Well, I've visited quite a few. Right now, I'd say, to a degree, I'm huge on supporting businesses in Africa.
Okay.
And I definitely advocate for, visiting probably South Africa. I'd recommend, going to check out Cape Town. They have a lot out there. They have beautiful vineyards. But at the same time, I'd probably highly recommend that you also make sure to go and see, more of the local spots.
Yeah.
Try out the local food. And get to know the people, the culture, the history of that country. I really believe in that. And of course, there are places I've also visited, and I'd also advocate for somebody to go and just check them out. I've been to 2 other places that I thought were amazing. South Korea is really beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Especially during spring when they have the what do you call them? The cherry blossom trees.
Okay.
So the entire town is just covered in these lovely light pink blossoms, and they even have sort of festivals around it.
Okay.
And of course, their food is very, very unique.
Okay.
It's very, how would you say, also quite healthy, by the way. They love a lot of how do you call this, fermented vegetables, so like kimchi and rice, and then seafood, fish, things like that. I'd highly recommend you visit South Korea.
Visit South Korea by Leonida.
And South Africa.
In South Africa,
every country has a south in it.
Now I have to visit South Korea. I've not been there. I've only heard stories about it, which I don't want to delve into now.
It's a whole other podcast
to be recorded. But hey, welcome again.
Thank you so much.
So today I want us to discuss about working remotely.
Yes.
Or remote working. How do they say? It's just the best way is remote working.
Yes.
Is it hybrid also?
Well, yeah, to a degree, there's hybrid. Now, for hybrid, it means that sometimes you're required face-to-face in the office.
Okay.
Yeah. But more or less.
So, for the years of your experience in working for those all companies that you've mentioned, the 8 years, you've equally also worked remotely. And some people are listening to this for the first time.
Yeah.
Someone in a particular village, okay, they have access to internet and they don't know what working remotely means. They just hear people are working remotely.
Yes.
I'm working remotely. Do you want to break that down and tell us what really working remotely is, and how have you practiced it, how long, and how has been the journey for you?
Yes, most definitely. I think there's so many misconceptions. Let's start from there around remote work. Some people think that, if you're working remotely, it must mean, this girl is probably constantly on the beach somewhere or just chilling and, I can interrupt her in the course of her day.
Yeah.
And maybe I can call her up and we can go hang out in the middle of the day.
It's easy because she's at home.
Yeah, you're just working at home. Let me tell you, remote work, it requires a lot of structure and systems to be put in place. And you yourself have to have a certain level of discipline to be able to actually be, productive. And it's actually a whole other culture, I'd say. But definitely remote work for me, I feel, is the future in the sense that, I think during COVID, that's when it was really being popularized. But there's always been jobs out there that have been remote or even hybrid. But it's during that period that it became popularized. And then now, sort of, you're seeing more of a return to work sort of thing going on. But the truth is, it's still an amazing benefit to your staff to allow them to have some level of flexibility in their work. And, your staff will also appreciate just that feeling of, you trust them to do the work. And it's not just about blind trust. Like I mentioned earlier, there are several systems usually in place to ensure that everybody is meeting their end of the bargain. And you have to over communicate, by the way. So you can't just be planning on working, say, asynchronously. That means working maybe like if somebody sends you something to do, you can do it later. Like you don't have to respond immediately.
Because you're at home.
Yeah, but you have to have a level of discipline, especially when you're working across different time zones.
Okay.
So I would say it's about you first. You have to have discipline. You have to have systems in place to make you more productive. And yeah, that's how it works.
I think let's break it down. In you've mentioned systems, okay? You've mentioned culture and ethics. You mentioned working within particular period, and people should not take advantage because you're working at home, so that they can just throwing calls left, right, and center. But equally, you have also mentioned something that I'm very passionate about. It's called enabling environment.
Yes. Tell me about it.
So you're the one who's gonna tell me about it. But I want us to break them down so that we start with one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you working at home first of all. How did you get to start working at home first? Like, of course, when back then we used to work, when I used to provide multimedia services to the company we used to work for, or I used to, that I met you at, I used to come to the office. Okay. Then how did your journey transcend from office to home first of all? And also how did also mention about the COVID period, because you also mentioned that. So briefly discuss your journey and also discuss about the COVID period, because that is where it was so popular. Everyone is like, I'm working from home.
Oh gosh.
I'm working from home.
That is actually a really good question. And it's funny because no one has actually asked me about it like in great detail.
Yeah.
So yeah, today we'll go through that.
It's about time.
What was my transition like? First of all, funny enough, I actually loved it.
Okay.
I loved it because obviously it meant that, you no longer have to deal with, the commute. Because for me, I felt like the commute, especially if you're not walking to the office, is honestly quite a stressful part of the day. But what I was able to do in terms of transitioning, luckily for me at the time, our company was also very keen on doing training for us.
Okay.
And this is something that, you can access.
So the company invested in training?
Yeah, I'd say they basically gave us a basic layout about how to succeed while working remotely.
Oh, wow.
So things, for example, you'll be taught, like, you remember what I was saying about over communication.
Yeah.
So it's no longer about just assuming, like when you're in an office setup, someone will come to your desk and be like, you forget. Maybe you didn't structure your day accordingly.
Yeah.
So now because of that, this is a hot take, by the way. My hot take is that you can survive in an office environment with a bit less structure than you would have to have in a remote setup. Okay. In a remote setup, you will be caught out very quickly because in a remote setup, you have to be so well structured. Like you have to have project boards, and we'll go into this in detail a bit later.
Yeah.
But you remember the structures I was saying you have to have. You have to, for example, outline what is your work going to be around. Perhaps you have to even structure how you'll work with your team on maybe, are you doing daily stand-ups, or do you have a system where you're putting in like your workflow for the day so that people can have an idea. Okay, today Nida will do this, and this, and these are the timelines that we've agreed upon, such that people don't get surprised or we can catch early, like if you've forgotten something super important, we can catch that very early. So these are some of the stuff that, works. You have to be very structured and very organized in a remote setup. So for us, when we transitioned, it was very interesting. I'll say us.
Okay,
because it was the entire company.
Oh, wow.
So during COVID, it was the entire company having to move away from, being in the office and that thing of when, you've not structured yourself well. The next day is when you remember some report is due, and then you go to so-and-so's desk and you'll be like, by the way, see, we finished the report today. Now you can't do that anymore with the remote setup, because you have to remember you're working with multiple stakeholders.
Yeah.
It's not just so and so. You're also working with this other department. So you see, you have to be really well structured so that everybody whose input is required can, each assignee basically is aware of what you need to work on. And then, of course, you have to come up with, are you doing one-on-ones frequently with certain departments or certain stakeholders on a regular basis? You have to have written down agendas. Basically, you have to have a system where things are written.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's no longer about just, vibes.
Vibes
just
and inshallah.
Vibes and inshallah. You show up and it's like, I'm in the office. I forgot. I needed this from finance. No, you should have documented that.
On record. Yeah, but now that also makes me ask you then how then did your discipline transition also? Because you mentioned about discipline and commitment, because in the office, I have been in an office. I know there's just some days, there's just some days in the office that are just, we call them lazy days.
Yeah.
They're just there. There's nothing happening, but you're just in the office, okay? But also there's days in the office where there's work and things needs to be done. But still, there's some lazy hours in between, okay?
Yes.
So how did you develop your discipline and commitment to ensure that the hours attached to you within the particular period of work, you committed to it? Because that's something most people are still even struggling
This
with.
is what's gonna help you. Remember that system? I'll still go back to it.
Okay.
You're supposed to agree on what deliverables, or rather, what deliverables you're going to, produce within a certain period of time. So literally just having documented that will put you in a box. So now you can't really, backtrack. You had already said you are going to work on this. And remember, these things are all it's like the other teams also depend on the work. So your output is actually being waited for, and you had promised it, and it's written down, and it's on this schedule that has so many other things attached to it.
Yeah.
So if you fail to deliver, you will be caught out so quickly.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's so ironic. And actually, Steve, I would have loved for us to start with misconceptions, because there's so many misconceptions, by the way.
Let's get into it,
around this remote work. People think that, okay, if you are working in a more flexible place, some people may perceive that, flexibility equals, you're not doing much more work.
Yeah.
But what I've actually found, and what a lot of people who work remotely will tell you, is that you find yourself a bit more productive. I guess there's a sense of, when things are a bit autonomous, like you have agency over your work. And of course, you're supposed to, like I told you, use those systems to update everyone on what you're doing. It really actually drives you to have to achieve those things, so that you also don't, disappoint your teammates, or if there's any dependencies they had from your end, you're not going to, mess up the whole system of work. So because of that, it will, I'd say, in a sense, automatically kind of line you up in a way. And that's also where now, of course, you have a manager. Your manager's role is also to make sure that you stay on top of things. So definitely your manager will be on your case if you're not disciplined. And of course, if you're not disciplined enough, then you may be on your way out very fast.
Yeah.
But otherwise, so there's that misconception of, you're in the house. How are you being productive?
Okay.
But then there's also the other misconception of, like, perhaps working remotely means that you can just work anyhow at whatever time. What you'll find is, like I said, you have to be structured. You have to show people like within what timeline is this work expected. And you'll find that, for example, even if you're working remotely, time zones, for example, really matter.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore time zones. If you have, for example, the majority of your customers or majority of your team is, say, sitting in, I don't know, Washington, you're going to have to work with their time. So in as much as, yes, you may be working async, and of course this differs from case to case, office to office. Some places will still say, you know what, retain the work within your time zone so you can work async. But there are certain things that you kind of have to be very mindful about. So for example, in marketing, if I am sitting within the East African time zone and I have customers, say, in Washington, and I'm planning, say, some automated emails, I have to remember my customer who I'm speaking to is sitting in Washington. This email has to be scheduled at a time when they're likely to read it. So I can't just be oblivious and say, oh, I'm working in Kenya, so I'll send it at my time, like my 8
I send it any time.
Yeah, you have to be somehow working remotely, and especially across different time zones, makes you more, how do you say, you have to be more conscious of some of these things. I feel like there's another misconception I was gonna mention, forgotten. But I think it had something to do with, also culture of an organization.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might think it's just something that comes along naturally to some people. But, there's a reason why there are some jobs that will kind of check and try to see, does this person actually have experience?
Yeah.
Because now you do require, I'd say, some level of training, especially if you've not really worked in that space before, because you have to really transition how you organize your work. And we'll go into that shortly.
Okay.
Based on, now working in a flexible environment where people aren't always going to be around you, and you have to be basically really organized. So the good news is there's so many resources out there. So you don't have to panic. And like us, our case was COVID. COVID is the thing that pushed us out of the office. Yeah, COVID did the thing. But now, luckily, those resources are everywhere. You can read up on the different tools that you can use to work. And luckily, a lot of those tools have like free, what do you call these? The freemium model where you don't have to pay for a subscription. So you can just get the free version and learn how to use, for example, if it's for project management, you can use Trello, Asana, and just learn how to use these tools to organize your work so that everyone can see, what you're working
doing.
on.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I'm finding those perspectives very interesting, but I think I wanted to ask you the next question about thriving in working remotely, okay? But before I get there, I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think organizations are still struggling with remote work? Do you think organizations are struggling with that? Do you think organizations believe in the systems that they have set for people to work remotely? Because the new norm 1 year ago was working remotely, 2 years ago was working remotely. Now the new norm is the old norm. People are wanting
return
to be back,
to work, as they call it.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that statement because it implies that people who are working remotely are not
Doing
working.
anything.
And it's so funny. Let me tell you, I feel like it's kind of the opposite. For me, and it's funny, we didn't even start by saying this, but I forgot to mention that I have over 5 years of experience working remotely at this point. So majority of the work that I've been doing has been actually remote. So I would say that towards the beginning, it was harder for companies because there really wasn't a framework in place for most places. And you'll find, Steve, by the way, everything starts at the top. Everything starts with leadership. If your leadership team doesn't understand how to structure, how to measure how productive their team is, or how to organize people's work in a place that they can measure, basically, if your leadership team is not in a position to structure those things in a way that they are confident that their staff are being productive, then unfortunately it kind of trickles down, because you need the people at the top to be very organized and know how to manage these new systems. And it's also, honestly, like I told you, a whole new way of thinking. Technically, it's not new. Like I said before, it's not a new way of thinking. Remote work existed way before COVID happened. Yeah. It's just that the unfortunate thing, and even as we're having this topic, it's very important to mention that, unfortunately, not all jobs at this point can still be done remotely. Yeah. There are certain roles that still require you to physically present yourself. Yeah. But for those roles, so that's actually what this podcast is touching on. We're talking about those specific roles where people can actually afford to work
remotely.
Yeah, remotely. I'd say the biggest benefit it gives to your staff, especially like for someone like me, the benefit it unlocked for me was geographical mobility. Yeah. In the sense that I no longer have to live in Nairobi. Actually, as we speak, I don't live in Nairobi. I live in a very different county, several kilometers away. Mm-hmm. And, it's unlocked for me a new benefit in the sense that, the quality of life on that other side has been much better. Yeah. And, that place is actually home. I've been living there for over 5 years now. Wow. Okay. And literally, for me, it's become a lifestyle. It's no longer, it's no longer just something I'm doing for fun. And so I usually get people asking me this question like, utarudi tu, you'll just come back. Yeah. And I don't mind. Of course, there are some opportunities you'll find that are amazing, but for whatever reason, the structure of that place requires you to be there physically. And let's also not neglect that. Like I said, there are certain roles that would just require, your physical presence. Yeah. But there are certain roles, like what I'm doing right now, because again, I work in the digital space. I'm a digital communications manager. So, digital. Yeah. So in that case, it allows you to work from a different space, just as long as you're organized and you can show people what your workflow is like, as long as you can document, have you met your KPIs? Yeah. Do you have a way of regularly reporting, what you've been, what your outcomes have been for a specific period? Mm-hmm. For as long as you're able to do that, really, I don't think there should be a problem. And especially if, of course, the first requirement, please have good internet. Yeah. So that at least, even as you're engaging with your stakeholders online, it's not like a struggle to also hear you, because also that affects your how you're perceived. Yeah. By whoever you're engaging with. And then there's a whole other story, by the way, like working online. It also has its etiquette, by the way. There's some stuff that you should do ideally. So let me give you a good example. If you're meeting somebody for the first time, now these are some stuff we were taught in those workshops. If you're meeting people for the first time, or if you're having a very important meeting, for example, ideally you should keep your video on. It's just a way of making people still feel like you're in the space with them physically. It's kind of like a sort of an illusion that you create. Mm-hmm. So if you meet people and your camera is always off, especially for very important meetings, it can be perceived as you're being like you're being sneaky.
You're being dodgy.
Yeah,
Why
you're
is
being
the camera
dodgy. Like,
off?
why
Yeah.
are you hiding? So sometimes there's that, but then as you also get again, these things are about company culture. You'll be in companies where, we're having the meetings online, but you don't necessarily have to turn on your camera. But especially when you're doing face-to-face, one-on-ones, come on. It's usually a good idea to just turn on your camera. But again, it's on a need basis. There are days you have a bad hair day. Now those are the
Like
benefits. Those are the benefits. Those are the benefits of remote work.
Okay.
But yeah, you have to... discipline is,
tell me another etiquette.
key.
Tell me another etiquette that I'm also learning.
Other etiquette, like just like in real life, when people are talking on a call, for example, online, don't interrupt them when they're talking. There are buttons, for example, there's usually like a raise hand button, so you can click on that button. So instead of interrupting someone when they're mid-sentence, they'll get the beep and they'll be like, oh, so and so, I see you've raised your hand, bring up your point. So that way you're not like
intruding.
Constantly clashing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you something that was not part of the question, because you have made me feel I'm learning so much from you, honestly. And now I'm looking at remote work as a geopolitical tool in a way.
Yes.
Okay? Because why would companies globally, not just here in Kenya, go with return to work policy when you can just literally stay at home as an employee or employer and save on cost, save on mobility cost, save on some expenses for example, snacks or food in the offices, save on electricity bills. You know, why do you think remote work is disrupting how people view work and employment in a way, even geopolitically, even just politically, or even economically? Give me a bigger perception about that, because I'm seeing it. Why would someone tell me to go to work when they know I have to wake up at 6 a.m., get to work at 8, when I can still wake up at 7 a.m., and by 7:30 I'm at their desk and I'm doing the same work I was doing in the office?
Those are really good questions. I sometimes probably ask myself the same question too, as someone who's been a beneficiary of remote work for the last over 5 years, really. Well, I think it's what I was saying. Unfortunately, it's a case by case scenario. Some businesses, based on purely on their structure or their model, require somebody perhaps to be there in person. If, for example, the leadership has not managed to enforce this new culture and people have just not been productive, sometimes that forces, some people to have to return their staff to work. And of course, you also, sometimes, for me, I just think it's a culture issue, really. Because if you trust your people and you're able to enforce systems and people have a sense of ownership, a sense of integrity, you're able to do this work. Again, like I said, there are certain roles that can be remote. There are roles that, in all honesty, you just have to be there physically. Like, and believe it or not, you remember I told you that I've worked in a healthcare company.
Yeah.
We were actually providing virtual healthcare to over 15,000 members. And these people gave us a lovely CSAT score of 95.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine, we were doing an amazing, incredible job, despite the entire company, doctors included. Majority of the company was working, we had a hybrid model, but now in my case, I was fully remote. We also had some other positions that were fully remote. There were some people, though, who had to be there physically. So, for example, the logistics team, the people who would go out maybe and help deliver like the actual medical equipment. I mean, unfortunately, you have to be there physically. There are some people maybe who are working in the administrative roles where they had to help staff, or maybe like the ops roles where, you have to make sure people have their laptops, the IT guys who have to check if things are like the hardware and everything, and setting up stuff in the office. Now, unfortunately, those ones you have to be physically present. But they also had some of these people would still be given some remote time, which is why now we had a hybrid model. So and Steve, it's funny because I feel like there's so many fun things we're talking about. I've even forgotten the original question.
No, you've answered it. You've answered it in a way. But the next question I wanted to ask you was then how do people thrive then in remote work? Which I think you've mentioned some elements around.
Yeah, some elements. But I think maybe even before we go into how to thrive, I'd love to actually talk about some of the challenges that you're going to encounter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness.
So there's some challenges you'll definitely encounter.
Yeah.
So for me, one of them, and it's something most people don't even think about, literally loneliness and isolation.
Oh,
because like when you're in an office setup, literally you're surrounded by people. One of the things you'll definitely miss is that when you're working remotely, this is what tends to happen. You remember the way I was saying everything is like documented? It's meetings, show output, record, write your plans for the next day. Like everything has to be written down. It's not a guess game or, I'll just schedule a meeting and we'll talk about it then.
Later,
that's not how it works, at least in my case, have been able to work and thrive remotely. So like there's that loneliness of just generally, you don't have those, what they call office water cooler conversations where, you're heading to get water and then you hang out with your colleagues and, over lunchtime, you're all there talking about last night's match or whatever it is, the craziest celeb news in Kenya. Some of that, an aspect of that kind of diminishes. So what I would do in my case, because our place, like I mentioned, was hybrid, is that I'd from time to time try and come to the office at least once in a while, just to also be seen by people and build that personal rapport. Because I believe it's also important. And this is why some offices feel like they'd just rather just have it, have you come face to face completely.
People,
But now, in my case, I feel like that is also still kind of restricting your employees, because honestly, I am a huge advocate for remote work. It's another level of independence that allows you to plan your time well. You're able to live in whichever town really and still thrive.
As you deliver the work.
As long as you're delivering, that's the whole point. And so I feel like that can be a challenge, the isolation. But so there's that way of dealing with the isolation, like going physically to meet the people in your office every once in a while. Doesn't need to be so often. In my case, I'd try once a quarter. So maybe once a quarter, I'd just hang out for probably 1 week, 2 weeks. And that should be sufficient. So at time, for example, if there's a major event, or at time if there was maybe my boss is coming in from a different country. So that's basically how I'd organize myself. Let's see, another challenge that you'll encounter. Funny thing is a blurred sense of work-life balance. What do I mean by this? So remember how you were saying there's this misconception that remote work basically means that, you're just chilling, you're working in the house, therefore you must be relaxed. You can work whenever, you start whenever. The truth is you need to be very structured. You have to have a timetable. You have to know when you're starting your work, when you're ending. You have to be disciplined enough to know For example, now this is something I would do, and a lot of us in the office would end up doing when we went remote. We actually found that most of us were working like way over our hours. Like we were actually, I'd say, the work-life balance kind of got messed up in a sense because we were trying so hard. Like I said, you've written down your deliverables, but if you are not structured enough, like you find that you're working way over time. So now the opposite would happen, which is maybe the time you are supposed to be with your family, you're still on your laptop trying to figure out A, B, C, and D, or trying to close something on a project. And so that now actually made us, and it's one of the things that was addressed during those workshops I've talked about. You just have to organize yourself a lot better. Yeah, so that's honestly the main thing I'd say that would make you successful with remote work. Organize yourself and communicate. Those are the two things, but we're gonna go into more of those in a bit.
Yeah, in a way, I also think you've reminded me of a client I'm currently handling. This client we've never met in person. Okay, this client is in Cape Town, SA. So, but the company is global. Okay, the company is global. So what happens is they have some consultancy in Kenya and Tanzania. So when she wants to give me work, I think she has built trust with me. Okay, we did some projects sometimes back with them. It was good. So because I did one, I've never met these people. We just do emails. Okay, emails in clarity. When is this project delivered? What are we waiting for? In the end, we build a trust system with them that even if they don't find me on my official email, they'll just Gmail me. You know, and because they know there's no way I'm disappearing, they're just Gmailing me, and they know if my office email is probably bouncy or a technical error, they'll find me and they even have my number.
On this other channel.
So I also think the concept of remote work is also having that trust and the confidence in people you work with.
Precisely.
Yeah, so that there's no need for you to look at the bigger picture of, I don't find Nida is offline. So, so you start getting worried because there's a task pending.
Yes.
And then you cannot find Leonida online. So you don't even know if there's a problem.
Tell you what, that actually brings me to another thing that I had forgotten to mention, which is also kind of a disadvantage or a challenge of working remotely, which is honestly over communication fatigue. Because in as much as I'm talking about these systems, the truth is you'll be required to log in multiple channels on multiple platforms about what you're doing.
Oh, wow.
So you might feel so fatigued. Like it's almost like part of the work becomes talking about the work
you've done.
Yeah, or talking about what you're planning. When is it most likely to be done? What can we expect at the end of this period of time?
Okay.
So you'll be logging this in different channels, also depending on how your office or how your people have structured themselves. So you'll feel it because maybe under normal circumstances, like in an office environment, especially in an office environment, I'd say one of the benefits by way of working in an office, once it's a certain time of day, especially in certain companies, come on. I mean, in some places it's 5 p.m. Let's close the doors, everybody out.
Oh, wow.
But now in a remote setup, there's no such thing sometimes. So there's no such thing as a queue that will tell you, oh, now it's 5 p.m., now it's time to shut down or whatever. In most cases, that doesn't really exist.
Okay.
Whereas your boss would be more inclined to tell you, like, if you're in a physical space, they'd be like, okay, it's 7 p.m., I'm not sure I want to add something for this person to work on now. But in a remote setup, chances are very high, async work, chances are high those things will be allocated to you at whatever time of day. So, but again, it's also up to you and the boundaries that you have within your organization. And of course, like I said, it's a case by case basis. For some people's contracts, you're required to work within a certain period of time. Also don't overextend yourself. It's something we were talking about actually off camera just before this. But also have your boundaries, but also work within your contract. So if your contract says, this might happen, accommodate it based on your contract. But at the same time, I'm, again, a firm believer in work-life balance. So, yeah, just figure out those boundaries early enough.
Awesome. I think this conversation is not going to stop. It will be something good that we have a remote work conversation part 2. But I will want to ask you to probably give me a closing thought or remarks on this conversation, because I really think there's much more. First, you need to tell people you're coming back, or you can tell me you're coming back for episode 2 of remote work.
Yeah.
Because because of time, we've not touched on everything. Yeah. But equally, that's also where people could reach you out and ask, hey, Nida, I did not understand about this. Also tell people, where do they get you on LinkedIn? And just your closing thought. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, this episode has been quite fun, talking about something that I feel is, talking about remote work it was so trendy back in 2020.
Yeah.
Right now it's kind of decreased a bit, but the truth is there are so many remote roles out there, so many hybrid roles out there, and for some people this is almost a life or death situation for them, because perhaps you're handicapped, perhaps disabled, you're not really in a position to keep on commuting. For other people, perhaps they may have other maybe challenges that actually prevent them from, physically presenting themselves at an office. So, remote work is still there, very much around. And honestly, I don't think it's gonna disappear anytime soon. I think I'd say, what are my closing remarks? Honestly, it's what I said earlier. Just, maintain a sense of discipline, be organized. Of course, you yourself have to be somebody with integrity. You have to have a sense of ownership. You can't be asking for things that you are not able to deliver. Like, don't, for example, if you know yourself and you're not really in a position to, you perhaps don't have the discipline to work in such an environment, don't get in that environment
respect yourself enough to say no.
Yeah, like, because I also unfortunately feel like some people spoil these opportunities for others.
Yeah.
For example, if you don't have the capacity, or you personally lack the discipline, and then you go for these roles, and then honestly you've not made any attempts to upskill or learn how to adapt to this new culture, then obviously if there's enough people like that in an organization, the leadership team is going to have to rethink, and now you will have disadvantaged everybody, including yourself. So I would say to leadership teams, create systems that will enable you. If you don't trust your employees, create systems that will actually enable you to see at least how how productive are your staff. Have systems that enable you to check out their workflows and understand who's doing what, when, and how. And when this will be, delivered. Just have those systems in place. Of course, have workshops, because some of these things may not come, they may not be intuitive to everybody. So have workshops at least for your staff, so that they can understand what you need them to do and what your expectations are. So be clear about it. And, yourself as the staff, please also be organized, look for resources, if you don't have these already, to just improve your chances of doing a better job and being very productive. And of course, like I said, communication is key. When you work remotely, you have to over communicate. Don't just assume people know what you're doing. Yes, you'll have written down your project on, for example, on Asana. You've put down everything you are supposed to work on Trello, Asana, Coda, whatever it is. But now, have you gone maybe on Slack or Microsoft Teams to tell people, hey guys, this thing is done? And there's a new level also of, like, you remember the etiquette I was telling you about?
Yeah.
So for example, if you're talking about a task or something that needed to be done in a project and you're writing it down, please append the links, for example.
Yeah.
Don't make people guess or make people have to go and look for things. Like, attach the links. So like I said, you really have to research about also what it entails.
Yeah.
And it's work for everybody. It's work for the leadership teams, and it's work for anybody working within the organization.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. What an insightful conversation we've just had. I think we're going to have part 2 of this.
Yes, I'd love that.
Because we've not delved into so many. We've not even discussed culture in details.
Yeah.
Like, how can organization adopt working remote cultures?
Mm-hmm.
I think we also need to talk about how do organization also ensure that their employees or people working for them are disciplined enough to commit to the objective of the organization. But hey, we cannot finish everything now.
Oh yeah, Rome was not built in a day. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much. And I forgot to say where they can find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is Leonida Kombo. That's Leonida Kombo. Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I really enjoyed my time here.
Let's do this again.
Definitely. Very, very soon. So,
okay, thank you, Nida.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.